Hi, my name's Terry. Welcome back to my channel. So I have been working on budgeting lately and trying to figure out how to change our spending habits because we are in far too much debt, and also to change our shared perception on how detrimental debt really is and how we could live differently if we were out of it. We outspend our income and have for a very, very long time. So naturally, we have racked up a pretty substantial debt. The frustrating part about that is we really don't live very extravagantly. We just spend very foolishly, and it tends to be a surprise when we can't afford basic things. We spend a good chunk of our income on the privilege of owing someone else and on interest. So I did a lot of research and I came up with a few basic steps to help us create a budget. So hopefully this will help you too. Step number one, determine your monthly income. Figure out where all of your money is coming from and what dollar amount is fixed that you can count on every single month. My husband and I both have fixed incomes, and given the nature of his work, he also has a variable income as well, but I don't count that because it's different each month. I obviously track that, but I don't consider that for budgeting purposes. Step number two, determine your expenses. Figure out where all of your money is spent each month. I have always overanalyzed our spending, mostly to try to determine which one of us was spending too much. Since I have come to realize that keeping score is far more detrimental and harmful to our marriage than actually making a plan and figuring out what we can stick with, this time I evaluated our spend as a whole and divided it up into categories instead. I just wanted to determine what exactly we overspend on and where we could feasibly make some cuts. This was actually pretty eye-opening for me, a little bit sad. For the past 6 months, and probably much longer, we legitimately spent more eating out on fast food and snacking at gas stations than we did buying groceries and household items for all 6 people living here. Step number 3, determine whether or not you have a surplus or a deficit. Most people would be surprised to see that when they subtract their income from their expenses, they actually come up with a negative number. This means that you're spending more than you're actually earning. Most people don't even realize this until it's written down. In my case, however, there's no surprise here. I am all too aware that we have been outspending our income for a very long time. If you are one of those people that ends up with a positive number, then you should have no problem creating a realistic budget that you can actually stick with to pay down your debt. Also, I don't think that we can be friends, just saying. Step number 4, set realistic goals. What are the things that you actually want to accomplish with this? Make sure that you're very honest with yourself. Make sure that you set goals that you and your family can actually achieve. I am all too aware that since I struggle every single month to get every single bill paid on time, it's not realistic for me to assume that I'll magically be able to set aside a couple $1,000s for us to take another vacation. That obviously will not be one of my goals. However, I do feel like we can make enough changes and turn them into better spending habits so we could free up maybe $200-300 each month to actually put toward our debt and dig us out of this hole a little bit more. Fingers crossed. Step number 5 is to make a plan, and this is kind of where I struggle a little bit, but I did come across the 50-30-20 rule, and that's basically a budgeting technique that has you divide up your income into manageable categories. So 50% of your income would go toward your basic needs, like your mortgage, your car payment, your groceries, things that you need to actually live. Then 30% would go toward your wants, things like streaming services, though some would argue, myself included, that that is actually a need for sanity. But your wants, so your vacations, any purchases outside of groceries, things like that. And then 20% would go toward your debt. So in our case, my family first needs to determine what is a need versus what is a want. And we are definitely not on the same page with that. So more to come. It's not realistic to assume that my family, who literally spends almost half of their income eating out, will be able to cut that out completely. Just given our schedules and our kids' activities, it's not realistic to assume that we're going to free up an extra $1,000 a month by eating at home every day. We're going to eat out sometimes because our schedule just doesn't allow us to be here. But I am going to try really hard to start making sure that we have food readily available to try not to eat out so much, because I would like us to be able to free up a little bit more money, and that just seems like an easy fix. I think the hard part for us is going to be to determine where dedicated money should go. Does it fall under the want or the need category? Because you have to consider things like birthdays and anniversaries, holidays, teacher gifts. Again, this is why it's super important to be honest with yourself. You can look at your Christmas budget and think $1,000 is way too high to set aside. But before you make arbitrary cuts in that category, make sure that you list out every single family member, every friend, every teacher, every coach, every grab bag that you need to have a gift for, and then have a dollar amount set. You'll be really surprised to see how quickly small amounts just add up to $1,000. And it's really easy to say, we're not going to give that many gifts this year, but you're going to end up spending unaccounted for money on December 21st when your kid comes to you and asks what they're bringing their teacher for Christmas. Or you get the official invite to your third family Christmas party that has yet another gift exchange. You will not want to be the only ones that show up to the party and not have your children participate. Or worse, have them open up gifts from someone else and you have nothing to give somebody. So it's just important when you're going through things like this that you be real. You can don't just arbitrarily make cuts. Actually list it out and remember to be honest with yourself. Step number 6, adjust your spending to stay on budget. What do you do already? What do you need to do? And what can you change and adjust a little bit? You might just need to take a hard look at where you overspend in your budget, and rather than just cut things out completely, see if you can come up with alternatives, different options that might free up some dollars here and there. For example, cut cable. Everything is on YouTube anyway. Streaming services aren't that expensive. Make sure you fill up your time with free or cheap things to do, and then you won't be so tempted to spend on other things that might blow your budget. Maybe you start cooking from home a little bit more. Maybe once you establish a good routine, you start cooking from scratch a little bit more. There's a million YouTube videos out there talking about grocery budget haul challenges, trying to feed families on $100 budgets. It's definitely doable. And this is definitely still a work in progress in our house. So if you have any advice or any tips at all, please leave them in the comments below. And finally, step number 7, review your budget regularly. In theory, this all sounds absolutely amazing, and I'm going to strive really hard to try to create our budget following this rule. However, I'm not entirely convinced given our debt to income ratio at this point, and our very frivolous spending habit. I think the hardest part for us is really going to be determining what is a want versus a need and cutting back on the wants and prioritizing those and getting our whole family on the same page and to share the same perspective. Having this much debt really limits us, and we can't buy the things that we actually want to buy. I fear we are going to struggle in how we spend our wants and whose wants take priority. So I will definitely share updates in the future. Hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see where we're going next, like and subscribe. Thanks. See you next time.